I didn't have a place that I could show you for this one. This painting is something very different again. It doesn't come from the physical world, so there's nowhere in the world that I can take you to show you. I can't give you footage. The best I thought I could do is come here to a rugby field, where as a young guy I learnt what is at the core of this painting, and that is spirit. I learned it playing rugby. That was my first introduction to spirit. On grass. Amazing. Things like the spirit to overcome the opponent. When you've slogged it out for 80 minutes and you're dead tired, to access spirit, to want to dig up more energy that may even be spirit itself, to keep going and to win. The spirit of the team. As a young guy, these were all important educational introductions to this thing called spirit. And as I got older and started painting, my introduction and knowledge and experience of spirit became much more profound. And to keep this short, I saw them. I saw spirits. I saw the actual form of spirits. Phenomenal. And a little quick story that will perhaps help understand where I'm coming from and what it is that I want to try and capture and create. I also learned how to access spirits, how to become a medium. And always, skeptical and critical of what's going on. But there was a series of things that happened that were so profound that other people experienced as I did at the same time. On opposite ends of the beach, spirit experiences that happened to both of us that we could describe that were the same thing. Animals that are affected while you're seeing a spirit. These things are all, stepping stones to embrace the belief and the acceptance that spirit and the spirit world does exist. But this particular occasion, I used to travel from the south coast of New South Wales when I first started painting, just very first started painting, to a medium up in Canberra, 2.5 hour drive or 3 hours, every week to learn how to become a medium and to talk with spirits, with a very accomplished medium who would go into trance and we would speak with them. And this story starts with me having a dilemma in life that was very unique to me, or you can't use those two words together, I understand that was unique to me. And out of the billions of things that can exist in the world, in your life, the combination of these to actually occur as this particular dilemma, problem that I was facing, is incalculable. And because it was isolated in the middle of winter down here and you only get to say hello and talk about the weather, I didn't have friends to discuss this matter with at all. And so the next week, after thinking about it and meditating on this problem intensely for the week, I sat down in what they call a circle, where you sit with people and a small group of people, and the medium goes into trance, and an advanced spirit came through and spoke specifically about the intricacies of my dilemma. I hadn't told a word to anyone, and as I say, the combinations to construct those sorts of specifics are inconceivable. So it happened. So what I learnt was that someone had access to my thinking because I had allowed it. You can stop it, and I hadn't at that stage learnt how to stop it, and I didn't want to. I was learning. But that was the most profound experience, that to hear an entity voicing very specifically elements of my dilemma and to help me with my thinking. Didn't answer the problem, but definitely helped me with my thinking. And that really sealed it for me. And then from there, I went on and had incredible experiences of engagement with the spirit world. And I no longer do, because this is really important, is that in your learning, you are separate from the spirit world. And so you see spirits as separate from you. part of this world, but the psychic realm is something that you enter. But what I learned over time is that that is only part of the learning. And there's all sorts of traps in that kind of thing. For instance, there's someone I know who's on the internet now, been doing it for 20 years, all of a sudden decided wanted to become a psychic, and so basically told a whole lot of bullshit in her shows every week. And I looked at her and I thought, oh, God knows, she's wasting her entire life to this delusion, because in it being separate from you, it makes other people think that you're special if you speak about it, which is exactly what this person was about. She wanted to be seen as special, and so she goes and gets this information from, which is always the way, Archangel Michael. And I thought, knowing her, that's not going to be enough. She's only just starting. She will want to make herself much more special, and she's going to dream up names. And sure enough, within a few months, Archangel Spliggly Block and Diesel Dangle Dong, I can't make them up to the wonderful eloquence that she can, came through. And so her small band of followers who are vulnerable and want to believe in the greatnesses of life accepted it and believed this bullshit that she was telling, these names that she'd just made up. And she in no way had the experiences of real, valuable psychic experience. So when spirit is separate from you, when the psychic realm is something that only someone is deemed to possess, and I will now speak with the spirit who is a separate entity, that can create all sorts of ego problems and followers and all this sort of stuff. So what I learned in time, in fact, was that because I really wanted the truth of this. I was painting things and I wanted the truth in life, and I was doing it tough, and the truth mattered. Reality mattered, you know, and the enhanced reality mattered. And I'd already had a phenomenal few years of spiritual experiences, and so I wanted to get it right, because you only got one shot at life. The person I just mentioned is going to go through the entirety of the rest of her life and die and realise that all of that was a lie. And that's not what I wanted. I didn't want that. And I'd seen a lot of lives destroyed, and I just wanted the richness of the truth. And I found that over time, the knowledge and the experience of things that are considered external from you are actually part of your own being. And that's not an ego thing. It's suffused into your being if you just let it. And so these days I wouldn't know the difference between a spiritual experience and real life. I just don't know the difference. And that's not because I'm advanced, it's just that I don't want it to be separate, didn't want it to be separate, and it took 30 and 40 years for it to suffuse into my being. And so now I don't really give it a second thought. The same cynicism and need to critique everything is still there, but life is a whole lot more gentle with the knowledge suffused into the world, rather than pulling it out as something separate from you, from the world. Yet that's exactly what I'm going to do with this painting. So to be specific, what I want to do with this painting is capture spirit energy, but of a specific form. This is sleep energy. It's easier, I think, for people to understand, and you can meet them whatever level of acceptance you want. And I'm very happy if people just think, well, it's pretty colours. But I'm searching for it. So what I really love is the idea, and I've painted these before, it's a series of a theme that I love doing, and that is that a girl lays down to sleep and her spirit leaves her body and is just looking back at her physical form before it goes off into the realms of sleep. And I like it being female because the energy is very female in it. It's very receptive and soft and feminine energy. So that's the particular subject that I want to do, which means that as her spirit leaves her body and looks back at her, the sleep energy solidifies just enough so you can see enough of her form. And that's really what captures, I think, one of the most beautiful spiritual experiences you can have. I've actually seen ectoplasm, apart from spirits. And it's the most incredible thing. It's where the energy of the room sort of shimmers and shakes majestically, profoundly and beautifully and gently. And you slowly start to see the actual energy. Ectoplasm, and it can form into the shape of spirits and things. Quite a profound thing. So this painting is capturing much of that, where the spirit of the girl, it's two parts of the one being. The spirit of the girl is manifested from sleep energy and from spirit energy. And I can play then with the dimensions. We'll have a solid physical being and a non-solid physical being, and I play with that actual energy that, in terms of how much I make it visible and the colours I give it and so forth. Only advanced techniques can do this. You can't do it using basic techniques, and you can't sketch it and colour it in and so forth. It has to be moulded and shaped. And the painting will take probably over 100 stages. And what happens is that physically, if that's the canvas, as you add layers of paint, the light travels through to various layers and stages through that 100 and bounces back out of it. So I'm working from a blank, one-dimensional, or two-dimensional obviously, but one stage reflective surface. And through the 100 then I have choices as to which part of the stages, which degree of transparency and opacity gives rise to the image, and so the image glows. And so I'm moulding and shaping, if you like, very much like the actual subject itself. It's a beautiful thing to do. It's very difficult. You've got to really wing it and have a lot of fun. In other words, just enjoy it. You can't worry too much. You're always making decisions. And it's a magnificent way to really show what oil paint, when it's physically itself pushed to extremes, from very solid to very transparent and nefarious and weak, can do. That's the goal. From scoring tries to painting spirits. Ain't life wonderful? Well, let's get cracking. Beginning with this, it looks like a sketch, but it's not. This is purely to help me determine size and rough location, in other words, the visual weight that each of these two elements should have in the painting. I will not be using this as a framework or base to colour in. The next stage shows you a good example of that. The girl's face is way out of proportion. You see, I haven't coloured it in. What happens is that I will bring sleep energy in and over her, reduce her size. So what I've created here, speaking first of all of the physical girl, is a located series of techniques that are simply darker and stronger, because I'll use different techniques on top of them to develop the physicality of her being as it sits in this atmosphere of spirit energy, or sleep energy is a better way perhaps of describing it. The spirit component to her being uses different techniques and very light. Again, I don't know where her face is exactly, but I do have a rough idea of where her hair is, because her hair will be expanded and flowing and be created from the energy that I keep speaking about. Beautiful stage, a lot of fun. This is extremely exciting at this point. The main thing here is to ignore the actual figures themselves, because these will be moulded and shaped, much like a sculptor in clay. Same principle. Jumping ahead now, perhaps 20 or 25 stages and several months of work. You can see now how the faces have still not resolved, but they're forming a little bit more closely in terms of where they should be in the painting as I mould and shape. The colours are intensifying. You can see the night that exists outside of the room, off into the distance where a moon will live. And I'm dealing with light, that shimmering light energy that I spoke about when I saw ectoplasm. It's that sort of thing, but in paint. Or it's that sort of thing rendered as best as paint can do, and as best as I can do. With each photograph, I'm jumping ahead again about 20 stages or something like that, I can't remember now. You'll see that I darken and lighten the colours. I change the colours. I'm moulding and shaping now not just the spirit being, but also blankets and a pillow and the room itself and the energy itself, which is an element of this subject. You'll see here too that the physical being is much lighter than what it has been. As I mould and shape, it will grow darker and lighter, darker, lighter, as I build up the visual depth in the paint surface and create that shimmering effect as well. You can also see the spirit face beginning to appear here, but I'll mould and shape that, not sure where it is yet. Bringing colours bright, killing them off, subduing them, playing with the actual structure of the paint surface itself, and then bringing out colours again. This multiplies and multiplies and multiplies upon itself to give the complexity of the finished result, and the complexity in the paint surface itself. Finally, we have a fairly established form now. You can see her physical being is located. You can see her physicality developing. In other words, you could actually touch and feel that physical form, whereas you couldn't touch and feel the spirit. It's a real pleasure in this painting, the physicality and the lack of physicality, so that a viewer responds to it in terms of what they can touch and what they can't, and what is known and what is not. Again, you don't have to believe in this. Merely enjoy it for what it is, the attempt. And if you like the colours and that's it, great. If you don't like it at all, fair enough. It's okay. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm not here to sell the existence of spirits. And this photo, which is getting closer towards the end, but it's still quite a long way off. I don't know, 70 stages? I don't know, honestly, something like that. And the spirit form, her legs, and so forth are a little bit more strongly defined. And you'll also see that there's movement in the air as well. I want to capture the movement of energy as it jostles and shimmers and condenses into the spirit being, but also shows that the spirit is not stuck in one place. It's in the process of moving, going off into the land of sleep, subconscious or dreams or whatever you want to call it. And this is exemplified particularly by the energy streaming from her left hand as it reaches out over the physical body towards you, the viewer. Okay, as you watch me paint now towards the end of the painting, this is much closer near the end now. This is not with a small brush like this, but with the brush flat, like this. And you can see me using different techniques and applications, teasing now the final kind of placement of paint, which determines the final effect that I've been talking about. So it goes from really expressive, creative, loose, powerful, impacting strokes and techniques, to moulding and shaping, to refining. These are the refining strokes. This is the refining stage. You can see even now I'm still moulding and shaping, putting things on, adjusting them, taking them off, using the paint like clay. The exact opposite of colouring in, where colouring in is defining the outlines and then using paint to, well, literally colour it in. Instead, I'm using paint here to mould and shape. So when I work, I think of the paint surface as three-dimensional, as if my brush and knife and rag reach into a three-dimensional reality and mould and shape like that. So I'm thinking like a sculptor, adjusting in 3 dimensions. This helps the image congeal out of the atmosphere, the spirit congeal out of the same stuff of sleep energy. Feeling the spirit It is feeling the spirit energy, not the physical spirit, not the entity of the spirit, but the spirit energy out of which the spirit entity grows. So being watery and see-through, this sets those in and gives me highlights integrated into the hair without having to paint on the highlights. Now, a note about my brush. At this point, the paintings perhaps that you've seen are certainly the most common and the most depressing for me through this colouring in process that other people do and think that's all that is available to them. In that, they use a very small brush and use the point of the brush. In fact, some people start an entire painting from the beginning with a tiny brush colouring it in. Now, this brush that I'm using I consider small, but the bristles are about 1 inch long. But the way I work is to use the biggest brush possible, which means that when I hold this side on, the bristles are about 1 inch long. So instead of a tiny pinprick of a pointed brush, I'm using a rough bristle side on. So the brush surface is about 1 inch long as it works with the surface, and you'll hear it sometimes. Wonderful sound. And what it's doing is it's working with the hills of the texture and the valleys of the texture. The hills protrude towards you, the viewer, and the valleys recede into the painting. It's as though you're looking down on a landscape with hills and valleys. And the brush works with those hills and valleys. A whole lot of complex things happen in that process as the brush just quickly goes over it. And I'm aware of what those tiny little profound variances do as it does these. And it's very easy to learn, very easy to do. It's easier than colouring in. The techniques actually naturally do it for you anyway. You just have to get to know them and have done enough paintings to know that what you do now will have an effect later. This is not entirely visible in the sleep mist. Notice how it's come through. This is exactly what we want. It's gone off and I can tease it. And so you're creating in the now for an effect that will arrive much later. To me, about 100 stages and well over a year later. Sometimes I speak to camera when I'm painting. We can listen in a little bit from time to time. But I do two things usually. I fall into the boringness of tuition. This is light from the spirit. Let that go off. If you're not interested in learning, and I'm dreamy, you know, I can't form a very quick, succinct sentence terribly readily. So you're only getting bits of it here. Now, it's not hair that I'm painting, it's spirit energy that turns into hair as it forms into the shape of the spirit entity. So this is the actual sleep. And it's not a clearly defined line because it's all moulding together and this congeals out of the energy. These strong lights catch the eye. This is a clean knife. These stronger strokes show what this is. They're cruder as they get away from the entities, the beings. They haven't refined into the actual shape. Now, where her face is indistinct, I want you to complete her face in your imagination. Very cool, heaps of fun, creative, and let's see what it looks like when it's finished. And there it is. A girl has fallen asleep. Her spirit has left her physical body and is looking back at it before flying off into the land of sleep or the spirit world and do whatever they do. Good night.